This inquiry has been years in the making. The initial professional itch that eventually evolved into the research began 3 years ago when our school's early years lead began looking at how a play-based approach to learning, where children's voices are valued daily and where they lead their own learning, can form the basis of an engaging, rich and fulfilling curriculum. Initially implemented in the nursery, the children have since moved into reception and are now in year 1. The child-centric approach that they experienced at 3 years old has continued, and what was traditionally an early years approach has begun to strike a chord with practitioners who work with older children, as anecdotally it seemed to positively impact well-being and attitudes to learning. Which all led us to our inquiry question: in what ways does adopting a pupil-centred approach to learning impact on well-being in primary school-aged pupils? But why independent learning as a priority? The internet, literature, Pinterest, ITE courses, Instagram, they all provide us with quotes about play and its benefits. And as you peruse the huge amount of information available, it's hard to argue against play as an impactful pedagogical approach. But, and this is the question a member of my team asked, is it actually linked to the new curriculum?
The answer is a big yes. The Curriculum for Wales guidance states that pupils in early progression steps should be initiating, choosing and directing their own learning. This aspect of the guidance has driven the research in exploring a pupil-centred curriculum in George Street, particularly from a wellbeing perspective.
There are so many engaging texts out there that are linked to play and its benefits, and here are a few of the texts that we have enjoyed as a staff, as well as some that have provided key points for our research.
The Gwent Whole School Approach to Emotional Wellbeing, an organisation working with schools to develop a coherent approach to delivering health and wellbeing, cite 5 core components of wellbeing: safety, love and care, belonging, efficacy and agency. Much of the literature about child-centric learning and play state that development of various wellbeing aspects are key beneficiaries of pupil-centred pedagogies.
Anna F. Grave in Year 1 in Action argues that play-based learning inspires high levels of involvement because the pupils follow their own interests and drive their own learning. This has strong links to the core wellbeing element of agency, where pupils feel their voices are heard, thus improving motivation and engagement. Without either of these, effective learning is difficult. This aspect is also closely linked to efficacy, which Gwent Whole School Approach state is vital as pupils require this to feel they can achieve and enjoy success.
Pupils following their personal interests is explored in Ken Robinson's The Element. He argues that all of us, not only children, should have opportunities to work within their element, that point where natural talent meets passion. When working within the element, motivation levels are heightened, people are most inspired and greater success is achieved. A person's personal element allows exploration of different types of intelligence. These could include analytical, creative, social, emotional, or practical intelligence. With the new curriculum promoting a more holistic approach to teaching, opportunities to explore these different types of intelligence are more frequently made available for all pupils, particularly when they are at the centre of the learning experience.
Across the phases, a variety of research methods were utilised, each contributing to building a picture of how well-being is affected by pupil-centred learning. Firstly, in Year 1, practitioners observed different children, picked at random across a fortnightly period, and graded their levels of involvement using the Leuven scale. These observations were made during periods throughout the day, identified as either teacher-directed or pupil-led. The data indicates that pupil engagement is greater when they make their own choices as to what they're doing. An average score of 4.47 in child-led time compared to 3.62 in directed time. This chimed with drawing club and circle time activities carried out across the foundation phase, where pupils indicated they learned best in school when they were outside, being creative, imaginative, active and with friends. Learning for our children, as one colleague described, is all about people and play.
The questionnaire completed by Upper Key Stage 2 unearthed a desire amongst children to play to their strengths and explore their interests more. They suggested these could include, amongst others, coding, art and sports, skills that aren't always available to them every day. However, in the follow-up questionnaire, where children were asked if they would amend their independent learning, many said they wouldn't, as they were unsure of how to approach a more open-ended or child-led approach. It was clear that guidance, modelling and collaboration were very important to them, and some children mentioned that the introduction of collaboration tools such as Hub would perhaps allow for more peer support and guidance.
The focus group discussed a drawing task where Year 3 and 4 children outlined good learning as staying in a seat, writing and reading, never speaking, and showing good sitting and listening. Due to COVID restrictions, the shared independent space had previously not been available to these children, and resultantly such views on good learning are seemingly quite old-fashioned. For independent learning across the curriculum to be accessible to all pupils, these pillars of good learning clearly wouldn't be appropriate to all learners or tasks. The focus group acknowledged that a proposed play project, child-led approach to independent learning, would perhaps be appropriate, considering the impact of play in other year groups in positively developing levels of pupil independence and motivation.
It's helpful to refer to the emerging findings in relation to the WSA 5 core elements to wellbeing outlined in the literature review. The focus group concluded that, across the school, child-led learning appears to develop wellbeing across the three key elements.
What does our independent learning actually look like since our shift in focus? In quite general terms, the approach being undertaken in nursery to year 4 is generally a child-led, play-based approach, where the children's interests and ideas drive the direction the learning goes in. There is a shared philosophy, and it is one that's most concerned with agency, which is all about pupil voice, autonomy, and is very closely linked with developing ideas of motivation and engagement. Children direct their own learning, are motivated because they are afforded opportunities to explore their own interests, and develop positive dispositions to learning because school is a place where they can achieve success daily. The role of the adult is to support the children in their learning, to allow the children to lead and to support them as they guide themselves in the setting. The adult is what F. Grave calls planning in the moment. As children progress through foundation phase, greater amounts of small group directed tasks are introduced alongside play, and the children then have opportunities to transfer what is discreetly taught into their authentic work, play.
Building on the pedagogy employed in early years and foundation phase, independent learning in years 3 and 4 has also given the children opportunities to build their own curriculum and shape their own learning. It is also mostly focused on promoting and celebrating pupil agency. Greg Bottrell in School and the Magic of Children proposes an approach called play projects. The week starts with a shared fake project. On the board we draw through a play project together, drawing a large rectangle on the board and dividing it into 4 quarters. In each quarter you write the different elements: make and create, build, draw, and message. Children are given the opportunity to use and adapt your play project or create their own. They follow their planned play project from the book throughout the week.
Independent learning in year 5 and 6 is greatly focused on children transferring what they've been previously taught to independent challenges that are set by teachers, but with the interests that children are firmly kept in mind. While pupil voice is used to construct and plan projects and topics, challenges are initially teacher-directed. However, the children respond to these challenges, collaborate and solve problems independently. They have autonomy in how they present their work and the freedom to independently research using technology in the school library. This is all about developing efficacy, the sense of we can do it. This turns resilience and resolve in our pupils and the ability to overcome challenges in what they want to do every day.
Towards the end of the spring term and start of summer, members of staff, including both LSAs and teachers, visited different year groups and observed pupils completing directed and independent activities. Collating all the completed observations was a big undertaking, but the broad findings were: nearly all pupils were confident within their environment and could organise themselves and their work. Children collaborated brilliantly and were forging strong relationships, both with their peers and with adults. Agency was promoted strongly across the school, with pupils being afforded opportunities to make their own decisions about what and how they learn. Pupil engagement appeared high across a range of activities and regardless of whether pupils were directed by an adult or leading the tasks themselves. With that in mind, the balance between focus and independent tasks seems to be about right, with pupils enjoying the experience of both. Finally, it is really important for pupils to be allowed to explore their own curiosity and develop their imaginations meaningfully. To do so, the opportunity to see a task through to completion is really important. This creates an experience of accomplishment and a sense of efficacy and pride. To do this, the opportunity to revisit and repeat experiences and tasks is vital. There is so much to take away and reflect on following this inquiry. What are we learning individually and as a school as a result of having an inquiry process embedded in our school? Firstly, that we are all researchers. Every member of staff should be curious, explore their professional itch, and develop their own portfolio of expertise. Everyone has something amazing to offer, and this inquiry demonstrated that perfectly. Once inquiry is embedded as part of the school across all staff, it can drive real meaningful change that involves all stakeholders. It values all stakeholders as they make real contributions to the school and the learners. And which aspects are most useful? Collaborating in teams and across teams has been a massive part of this year's successful inquiry. Team meetings are timetabled in, and time is created for colleagues to reflect and discuss any initial findings. Simon Breakspeare's Agile Leadership Framework provides a structure to enable and identify manageable inquiry foci, setting targets and creating time and space to provide real and meaningful reflection, both during and after the inquiry process. And while that is something that is really working well, it is still a challenge. Finding time and space in a diary for all staff to engage can be difficult. As we know, working in schools is so busy and the day is full up, but it is something that we in George Street are committed to. After school meetings and inset and using these as opportunities for teams to collaborate has been a real successful way of carving up some space for teams to meet and reflect on their inquiries. As the data was acquired across the whole school, looking at different forms of approaches within the overall umbrella term of pupil-centred learning is challenging, and it is hard to reach consensus and reach shared conclusions, particularly with different research methods used. Pupil questionnaires may be appropriate for older children, but not so for those in early years, hence why drawing clubs and circle times were used to gather data with these children. It must also be acknowledged that a lot of the literature that is explicitly about schools is focused on younger children and those in early years provision. Rarely does the real precise research discuss children older than year 1. The culture of inquiry is firmly embedded in George Street, and we will continue. Firstly, with pupil observations, and these will include staff and governors. However, the focus will shift more to provision and learning environment, with a greater focus on being sensitive to the needs of the growing number of children with complex needs that we have at George Street, as they grow and they move through the school. Working in teams to carry out localised inquiry, as well as those with a whole school context, has been a real strength this year, and it will continue. Agile leadership and its promotion of inquiry, consisting of incremental moments that can be broken down in sustainable and meaningful ways, will continue to frame how teams reflect and identify next steps in their inquiry. Over the years, we have found the best way to sustain a culture of inquiry is to actually act on the findings. If colleagues can see an actual manifestation of what they found out, as well as its impact on the children, a school's culture of inquiry will be truly embedded. Instances of this have been demonstrated all year in George Street, notably amendments to and reflecting on independent learning and play, but also in improving links to our key stakeholders. The text that we've used in this inquiry. We hope you've enjoyed this video and found it informative. Thank you very much.